It's a financial investment, but it's also, in a lot of cases, it's a home too.
Yeah.
And when, these little things go wrong or aren't managed properly, it sort of just changes how people feel by the time they're closing.
So we've been talking about having this conversation for a while.
Yeah.
And we're finally doing it. So thank you very much for coming. So I think, first of all, maybe you can just introduce yourself.
So my name's Kathy Murray. I'm a broker with Douglas Elliman. I've been a broker for this year, will be my 20th year being a broker. I grew up in real estate, so I've always been around real estate, and it's been interesting. At this point, 2 decades, I've seen so many different trends, and the marketplace really changed over the last 2 decades.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's happening with the market?
What's happening with the market? That's a loaded question.
I think everybody's asking the question.
That's a loaded question.
Rates, what's going on?
So there's different pockets to the market. And my team, we really cover all different price points. So we get to really see, really what's happening truly in the market. The luxury market has been performing really well. And like we were just talking about, like even this past August, it was a very busy August. Throughout Labor Day in the first week, when usually, back to school is usually a dead week in the market, the luxury market had its strongest week of signed contract activity in over 8 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And we had COVID in the middle.
And yes, we had COVID in the middle, which there's, two different markets. There's the depths of COVID where there is nothing happening. And then the post-COVID sort of post-vaccine frenzy, which was insane. I think every broker
that was the big, year. I would say the most hectic for you after COVID?
It was, I was actually still busy during COVID, ironically enough. I had 5 contracts out the week that COVID hit, and I thought nobody's going to sign a contract now. Like, who would sign a contract? They announced on Friday, Monday, everything was shutting down. 4 of my 5 contracts got signed.
Okay.
And I have a lot of clients who are from overseas. Mm-hmm. And I had one family who the parents are from Italy, the daughter was here. They were like, we have to find an apartment for my daughter, and we couldn't show. So we were, fortunately, a lot of my listings, I do video for a lot of my listings, so I was able to sell a few properties without even showing.
Ah, wow. Do you think it changed the way apartments are being sold? Like if you say that you were doing videos and selling without even showing, that are there still apartments that the way you sell apartment has changed after COVID?
I think people have become more comfortable, some of it being COVID and just people just getting more comfortable with technology and being able to rely on technology a little bit more. And also through a trusted advisor, knowing, like these are people that had known me, so they felt comfortable relying on me because they were buildings that I knew.
We saw as well at Daisy, I think in general, it pushed people to technology, right? So if you think about board meetings, right? And before that, most of them were face-to-face and annuals. And now it's kind of like a standard that everything is being done over Zoom, right?
Yeah, I remember I used to suggest to some co-op boards if somebody was overseas and the board would request to meet with the buyer. And I'd always say, once we'd submit the package, I'm like, you guys have to be available to fly in. This was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And I remember suggesting a few times, can't we just do like a FaceTime call? And the management company is thinking I was crazy. And the board members, like, a FaceTime call, no, like they need to be here in person.
Sounds crazy now.
Now like people, they want to do the Zoom. They prefer the Zoom for multiple reasons. One, because it also allows the board members more flexibility because the board would also have to be there to meet with the buyer.
And some of them we know now don't even live in the building.
And some of them don't even live there,
When you're representing a buyer, right, and you basically go and trying to assess the value of an apartment or what are the elements that you're looking at the building level?
Certainly the financial strength and health of the building is very important to look at. It's important because, one, is what a bank is going to look at if the buyer's financing. And 2, as a broker, I always say, like, I want a buyer that I'm working with to love the apartment that they're in. But I also, they're investing. You don't want to see, we can't predict what's going to happen, but we don't want to see, like any major maintenance increases or assessments come in as a surprise. Something that could really impact their financial situations.
What would you recommend board members to pay attention, I guess, on the financials part? I know also board minutes, it's something you probably look at it as well.
So there's a lot of buildings that actually don't maintain board minutes. And that makes, like, especially a first-time home buyer, it can make a buyer very skeptical. So making sure that the board is maintaining minutes so they feel that they're, when the buyer's doing their due diligence, that they're getting the full story, that there's not something being left out. As far as, again, the financial strength, if there's a big capital improvement, I always say, because sometimes boards or management companies will ask my advice, should we do an increase? Should we do an assessment? Really depends on the building. Like if the building has really high carrying costs already, I might say, in this instance, I think you'd be better off doing the assessment. Yeah, whether it's a 1 or 2, whatever it ends up needing to be, just do the assessment because you want to maintain, the overall going forward, the carrying costs of the building. Or if the maintenance is really low, I could say, don't do the assessment, do a small increase.
I know it's a tough question maybe, but let's say we want to renovate the lobby. Say we need to do an assessment. What is the ratio you would invest in the lobby versus increasing of the value?
There's not like a broad answer. Like, okay, if you renovate your lobby, your apartments are going to go up, 2%, 5%, or 10% in value. It really depends. Like if the building, if the lobby looks like it's in disrepair or is very unwelcoming to go into, it will help ultimately the value of the apartments, but it's also going to help make the apartments in the building more competitive in the marketplace.
What are the tips that you can give for board members in order to increase the value of the building as a whole?
For co-ops and maybe perhaps, if we're talking about like an older building or any building that's not brand new, I think what board members can do to really help with the value of the apartments is making sure that the common spaces and amenity spaces are well maintained and modernized. We see there's such a differential in value between older condos versus new developments. People are willing to pay. Like you look at the price per square foot, there's a significant differential on what apartments are trading for in the newer buildings versus the older buildings. And part of it is because everything is brand new, not just the apartments themselves.
So it looks good.
But the building, it looks good. It's real estate 101, the curb appeal. People want to walk in. It doesn't matter if they're spending, $500,000 or $5 million or $50 million, and they want to, feel good when they come home. If there's the ability to put something in, I would say to do that, whether, like a small portion of a roof or, a fitness center or even a small children's playroom, something, because buyers do really look for that.
One of the things that I was shocked, because I'm not coming from the real estate industry, right? And when we started Daisy, right, we basically broke down all the aspects of running a building. And one thing that I was really shocked is the process of selling an apartment or renting an apartment and the amount of documents you need to provide and the process is really, it's cumbersome. It's crazy.
It is.
What can you do in order to make it smoother, right? Because in the end, this is part of the role of the board and the management companies to really try to smooth this process.
Yes. I think it really just needs to be streamlined, and in a lot of instances, it's not, even though there is an application that as brokers we're given, whether it's a sales or rental application. And then, I'm doing one in a very big building right now, and it's a corporate purchase. So we have the sales application. I've sold in the building before, but this is a corporate purchase. There's different requirements for a corporate purchase, but it's not listed on the application anywhere. And no one says, okay, if it's going to be purchased as, individual or corporate, these are the requirements.
Like clear guidelines on what exactly you need to do.
Yes, no clear guidelines. And it's not until the package is submitted, then they come back and they say, well, we actually need this, 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 and this. And then they come back and they say, oh, well, we also need this and that. There's a lot of time lost, and it's, upsetting the seller who, wants to have this done with. And it's also, kind of making the buyer feel a little frustrated too. They get a little disheartened in a process that they should be very excited about.
What other things that in the process itself, you think can be streamlined more?
The sales and rental process in terms of the application can be streamlined some more. I think in terms of also, again, if it's a co-op, turning the package around in a timely manner. Every board is different, whatever it is, making sure the management company knows that and letting them disclose that with the buyer or the broker.
At least when,
so we know
when
what to expect. What to expect. So the buyer's like, okay, great. Do you think I'll have my interview this month? And it's like, I don't know. It could be this month, the following month, like going into the holidays. It's like, it could be next year. just, again, it's managing expectations and letting people know people are spending so much money. And this is, it's a financial investment, but it's also, in a lot of cases, it's a home too.
Yeah.
And when, these little things go wrong or aren't managed properly, it sort of just changes how people feel by the time they're closing.
It's one thing that I feel the industry as a whole, real estate industry, doesn't really have, right? And this transparency, understanding what's the status, right, of things. Like we click a button now and we know exactly when the Uber is going to get to pick us up.
Right, exactly. Yes, yeah. If you're sitting there, you click the button and you don't know if the Uber is going to show up in 2 minutes or 10 minutes, you're going to be frustrated.
Yeah, but the selling of an apartment of 5 million, you don't even know when it will happen.
You don't know when it's going to happen. It's frustrating for the brokers and definitely very frustrating for the sellers and the buyers, And then the management company ends up in this middle place where they have us calling them and being like, hey, I need to know. And, everybody's just getting frustrated. So
that's exactly why we build the dashboard, right? Because then the board can actually vote immediately. And then we can let the broker and the buyer know much faster. But I can say that the industry, like where it is right now, like we get brokers sometimes, they send us, and if we don't answer after 2 hours, they already have to call, because there's so much use for not knowing and trying to expedite things really, really fast, because this industry is really, again, you don't have transparency on the process.
Right. Yes. And when somebody wants something, they want it yesterday. So it's like, and then we're like,
no, and I understand that. In the end, you want to sell, right? You want to have that transaction happen. So it's very interesting to see.
Yeah.
And going back, I would say, to what other things that you believe buildings can do, or even owners of apartment can do in order to increase the value for the apartment itself?
In terms of increasing the value for the apartment itself, it depends on where they are. If somebody's ready to sell, I usually don't tell somebody to invest more money in the apartment and start renovating just to sell it, because even though the market is active now, the days are long gone when you're going to get, even dollar for dollar, like dollar for what you're investing.
Wow. Okay, so it's not worth the investment.
In most cases, it's not. You could do small improvements, if there's any damage in the apartment, if, like, I don't know, maybe there is a leak or something, certainly repair that. If you see yourself selling it in the next, 3 to 5 years, try and keep it pretty neutral, and if you have a very specific taste, put in small decorative touches to keep it more general. It's usually more about having it, maybe decluttering the apartment, having everything looking as neat and presentable as possible. And if it's an apartment, then it's neat and presentable. You want people to be able to walk in and sort of envision themselves living there.
And do you see a lot of cases? I know you are as well working with specific buildings, right? So the building works with one broker. Do you see it happening more or less? Like, what's the advantages of doing something like that?
I think the advantage of working with a broker who's sold in the building before is they understand the building. They work really hard on trying to, I'm not like there to just do a quick sale. I want to, we obviously have to listen to the market, but I want to really sort of preserve the pricing in the building, or push the pricing in a building as much as possible. I tend to sell over and over in a lot of the buildings that I work in. So the advantage is I know the building. If there's any hurdles to work through, maybe there's a bad comp in the building, that, like the neighbor downstairs sold their apartment at a really low price, and now the owner of another apartment, wants a much higher price. I know how to work through that in most instances, and understanding the neighborhood and understanding the buyer, like who's going to could be purchasing this apartment, and know how to market to them. I think it's also good, to sometimes you have a broker that lives in the building and they've been selling in it for, 10, 15 years or even longer. And sometimes they're looking more for a good neighbor than the best price. So that's also, like something that you need to look out for. So sometimes it's worth going to a broker that sold a lot in the building. Sometimes it's worth going with somebody who might bring in a new, fresh approach and be more focused on your needs and results than what they think is good for the building.
Did you have any occasion that you recommended to a buyer not to buy in a specific building because of the building and the condition of the building?
Yeah. A lot of times it ends up being a land lease building.
Okay.
I don't want to say every land lease is bad, but land leases, generally speaking, they're difficult, because a lot of times there's financing issues. The carrying costs can get very high. So generally speaking, I usually advise against a land lease building. One of the many benefits from doing this for so long, I know most of the buildings, and I know, like, I sometimes have clients that send me, like, oh, I really like this apartment. Look how well it's priced. And it's like, well, it's priced that way for a reason. There might be lawsuits in the building, or there might be really bad financials, or, there's usually some reason to it. And I'm able to quickly, without wasting too much time.
Because you know that.
Because I know the building. Yeah. I know the history of it. And sometimes it is a good deal. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is a really good deal. Let's go now and take a look at it.
So one, the land lease, are there other, I would say, red flags that you say, okay, you shouldn't buy in this building because of that?
Yeah. I mean, it could be if there's, perhaps major capital improvements that are coming up and the building's is not financially strong enough to carry it. And there's going to be huge assessments. But then everything, it's all, that could be a bad thing. But if it's reflective in the asking price, you really have to get in and look at it, because I think the beauty of New York, there's really, like, everything sells, and there's really, it's all priced,
accordingly.
Priced accordingly. Yeah. If you're buying into a building with a big assessment and you're getting at a really good price, it could end up being a good investment.
And do you think with the generative AI technology that is coming, how do you see it affecting the role of brokers in this industry?
Yeah, it's already changed so much. Like when I started, there was no Street Easy. There was, so like buyers needed us to even send them listings. Now I'm usually sending my clients the listings first, my buyers, but there's instances where they may send something to me.
So you kind of like shifted to more from information to more of an advisor.
That's what I was going to say. It's more like an advisor. It's more an advisory role than anything. And I think I like it because when I started, there was really no transparency, which for me at the time was good because I was a new broker and I, was able to maybe make myself seem a little bit more successful and that I was in the industry a little bit longer. But now, like, there's so much transparency. When I walk in, they've looked up my webpage, they've looked up my social media, they've looked up my sales history.
So they know you.
Yeah, they know me, but they also know the market really well. Like today's buyer and seller, and even just like your everyday, like I was walking down the street and there was they look like college kids and they're talking about real estate. Yeah. So I think that's great. And I think how it's shifted is, yes, we've become more of an advisor because there's also, with more transparency, there's also so much more information and data, and it's sort of unloading it. And it's like, okay, this is all great, but what does it mean? And really making sense of all of it.
So maybe with the overload of data now, you need someone to actually help you narrow it.
To break it down, to narrow it down. But I think, I think it's going to continue to evolve too.
So are you guys using any AI, generative AI tools like that?
Yes. And I think if you don't, no matter what industry you're in, if you're not utilizing AI, I think you're going to be one of the people that are being replaced. I try and hire people that are smarter than me with this, and a lot of times also younger than me, because they have their finger on the pulse of it. And I don't want to fall behind because I don't want my clients to fall behind. So I welcome it. I think that AI is going to do a better job in even helping you price apartments, because you see this estimate of Zillow, they're for New York anyway, so just so off. Like
it's off.
Yes, it's usually completely off.
Do you believe there will be a day that the bot will be the broker?
I think they can replace a lot of what we do.
Okay.
I don't think, because this is a financial decision and usually an emotional decision. So I do think that brokers in some capacity that we are needed. But I think also, like robots do open heart surgery now and surgeons are getting replaced. I think there won't be as many brokers in the marketplace because it's going to be more relationship based. And again, it's more somebody who is utilizing all of the data that we have and helping people unpack it. And
I think for us, what we're seeing, we're using a lot of AI. We have today about 18 bots running in our system and replacing a lot of the, in my view, the administrative work there is, right? Even in brokers, there's like these elements where they are tedious, that are repetitive, that are using, as you said, data, that can give the insights, can give a lot of things. And I think those will be immediate, to be replaced.
Right.
But they also, which I think in brokerage and in property management, there is this human element, right? In the end, we are managing people's home. You're helping people find their home. And I think there is this emotional part of caring and interaction that I think won't disappear very, very fast. I think people do want to interact with technology, but when it comes to their home, there is like this human factor that is very, very important, and this care that you need to provide. Both of us kind of like provide services in the end. There is a trend today of, service as a software, which I think is happening. A lot of services will be disrupted, but I think lawyers, brokers, accountants, and I think a lot of our components will be replaced, but there is this element of care that I think is critical.
Yeah, and I don't see that changing at all.
Yeah, and it amazed me with, with Street Easy and so much technology, other people still go to find a broker, right? And they use broker because of that. You want to have someone with you in this very big decision that you're making.
And at the end of the day, there's just so much data and so much that goes into choosing a home. And you really, I think you do need like a trusted advisor to break everything down for you, and somebody that has your best interest in mind at the end of the day, because, and even the negotiation process, like for an AI to be able to handle a negotiation, there's so much that goes into it and so much hand holding. And, a lot of times like thinking outside the box, either thinking outside of the box in terms of, marketing strategies, or thinking outside the box in the negotiation, and how we're going to bring the seller who's here and the buyer who's here, how are we going to bring them together? And I don't think AI today can do that. And I think a good broker is able to analyze that and bring it together. And frankly speaking, I don't think, a individual owner can do it either with for their own place. I've seen it myself. I've sold like over $1 billion in real estate. And I've also bought and sold my own. And when I'm doing it myself, I'm emotionally.
You use a broker?
I have, yes. No, I have. Yes, I have. I bought a place in Miami. I'm not licensed there. And I worked with a broker there, and just having somebody there, even though I understood the market and I was able to go through, the building financials, and just having somebody there that I knew when things were, when the negotiation wasn't quite coming together, they were able to because they were looking at me as the buyer, and having that third party, it helped.
How do you see the market in New York evolving, right? The rental market went up, now the interest rate, they just took it down. So how do you see it evolving going forward?
I think, the market's been active, and it's been a very strong start to the fall market, with interest rates just haven't gone down, and they went down much more than I had anticipated. There's a lot of pent-up buyer demand. People have been waiting, in the sub $2 million market. People have been waiting for this because they're very, focused on what their carrying costs are. So this 50 basis points means a lot to somebody like a first-time home buyer. So I think that's going to help the lower end of the market. And then at the higher end of the market, I have a lot of clients who are owners who wanted to sell, but didn't want to let go of their low interest rate. So they were staying in homes holding in homes that maybe they had outgrown or didn't really want or need to be in anymore, but they wanted another place. They just couldn't fathom the idea of letting go of this like sub 3% interest rate and taking on, like a 7% interest rate. And now that it's still not where it was before, probably never will be, but they at least feel like, okay, it's lower than it was, and I do need to move. And this is going to be the impetus to get them, from the sidelines into, putting their place on the market and buying a new place. So I think it's really going to help the market in multiple ways. More inventory will come on, so buyers will have more places to choose from. And I think buyers are going to feel more comfortable making decisions now.
How, if I'm a buyer, right, and I need to choose a broker, one is like, how do I choose the right broker for me?
Right.
And two is, what can I do to make this relationship with a broker better?
I think when you're working with a broker, what's important is picking somebody that you can trust, and somebody that's really going to hold your hands through the process and advise you through the process. 'Cause it's very easy for me to walk in. I'm doing this every day. So if it's, a seller, I can say, okay, this is what the apartment's worth. Or if it's a buyer, this is what I think you should spend on the apartment. But it's easy for me. It's not my money. I want you to understand this. If I'm giving you a price for an apartment, I want you to understand why I'm giving you the price. Because so many times when I walk in and a seller will say, oh gosh, like, I've met with 5 brokers and everybody's given me a different number. I'm going to sit through the comps and tell you exactly why.
So comparable to
I'm
other
advising.
apartments.
Yes, it could be comps within the building, comps within the neighborhoods, or sometimes there's no comps in the building. And because pricing, it's a little bit of an art and a science, right? So it's like, you really need to explain to the client why you're suggesting the number that you are, and the same with an offer, because if you're spending this money, I want you to feel comfortable with it.
I think it's super important. And we see it as well with our relationship with the boards, right? And when you give the data, when you show everything, and the fact we're managing hundreds of buildings and we have these comparables of telling, listen, your common charges are 30% lower, you guys need to do an assessment because your reserve fund is not where other buildings are at, then we can drive through to decisions and to actions. So
yeah, that's I always say to people, I'm like, I'm here to tell you what you need to hear. Might not be what you want to hear, but and this is why, because sometimes sellers, they have unrealistic expectations, and a lot of brokers will say a higher number just to get the listing, and then after 2 or 3 weeks they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, now we need to do a price reduction. I never want to take a listing knowing that I'm going to have to reduce the price, because I want to manage expectations from the beginning. Sometimes it happens, or sometimes I'll say to a seller, like, sure, if you want to try it at this price, we can try it. But if it doesn't happen within the first 30 days, we should bring it down to this price. So again, it's all about transparency, and the same with the buyers. Sometimes you think, buyers here in the news, I think the news has been a little negative on real estate, especially New York real estate. So they have this misconception that they're able to get something 20% below market. And that just doesn't happen in New York. And if it does, there's probably something wrong with the building, or their apartment is egregiously overpriced. So
amazing. So maybe I would say the last question, where should someone buy apartment today? Which neighborhoods are the upcoming one?
I've said this for a long time. I think the Upper East Side is undervalued.
Really?
COVID was good to the Upper East Side, not as good as it was to Brooklyn, but definitely price values went up on the Upper East Side. So I still believe, and I think there's more room to go up there, but I really think Midtown right now. If you look at how Midtown is trading, Midtown West specifically is trading in comparison to Upper West and comparison to Chelsea. There are so many great deals right now in Midtown West and Midtown East. And, all of Midtown had a very difficult time during COVID, because most people who are living in Midtown were living because they like the proximity to work. And when people weren't going into the office every day, people wanted to be, maybe closer to the parks, or they wanted to be outside the city. And now people are back in the office more, and being outside the city isn't so convenient, and being, maybe further west away from the subway is also not so convenient, or they don't want to take the subway. They miss walking to work. So I think it'll take a little while, but I think Midtown is going to come back, and it's going to come back really strong. So I think buyers that are looking for a deal, Midtown is the place.
Maybe not after this podcast now, because of the podcast, the prices will go up in Midtown. So.
No, but if it does, it's heard here first. I said it. Let's record it now.
Thank you very much for coming. It was amazing having conversation, and really appreciate it. And I'm happy we finally did it.
I'm glad that we did too. I know you guys are great, and I appreciate it.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.